Hey there. By the time you're watching this, it will be Saturday and it's movie night, so I'm here to present another quarantine quadruple feature. Now, our 11th week of quarantine was a rough one here in America. We've got a lot going on, and the main thing happening this week was another murder of an innocent, unarmed black person. George Floyd was killed in the middle of a street, in the middle of a day, by a police officer who put his knee on the back of his neck for 9 minutes until he died in front of witnesses with cameras rolling. He murdered a man with impunity, and tonight we are seeing protests all across the country in anger, trying to get justice for Floyd. So we're in a pretty frustrating spot right now. A lot of people are angry, justifiably. My city, as well as cities across the country, are going through a lot tonight. I'm sure you've been watching a lot of these protests. And originally, I had a different quadruple feature planned for tonight. After last week's quadruple feature of anxiety-inducing cinema, I was ready for a very easy quadruple feature this week because, watching Requiem for a Dream with United 93 back to back, it actually took kind of more of an emotional toll on me than I expected. As I get older and I guess have more life experiences, movies hit me in a different way than they did, 5, 10, 20 years ago. And last week's quadruple feature was a tough one. So I wanted something a little easier for tonight. However, I do feel like I need to do my part and raise my voice in this conversation. The main way that I interact on social media is, over the past few months at least, is through these quarantine quadruple features that I'm doing. So to not address this in this week's quadruple feature seemed a little disingenuous or oblivious to kind of just pretend like it's not happening. I do think it is kind of our duty as citizens of this country, especially those of us that are not people of color, those of us that are white, also need to raise our voice in solidarity for all of our brothers and sisters in this country that are going through a lot of heavy shit that we can't really put ourselves in the shoes of, but we can say we're here to support you in any way we can, and the easiest way you can is to be a part of the conversation. You need to raise your voice and take this position of privilege that you're in, and let other people know that you have their back and that we are all in this together, trying to tear down the bad things in this country so that we can rebuild stronger. And I engage with people on social media that might not be very politically minded or the most academic of souls, and that's totally okay. But you guys need to be having these conversations as well, even though they might be difficult and you don't want to have them. I have some family members that should be having these conversations, and I have friends back home that should be having them as well. So, if a few people see this and it kind of makes them broach a topic that they don't want to with people, good. All the better. We all need to do our part and make this a public discourse for the whole nation, not just people on Twitter. It needs to be everybody raising their voice in order for effective change to happen. When you look at social media, which is daunting for me sometimes, you look at Twitter, someone with maybe good intentions phrases something strange, phrases something not as eloquently as they could have, and then they get dragged through the mud by 1,000 people that are more academically minded than them or more politically savvy or just smarter than they are, when maybe sometimes it seems like these people are on the same side, but we're so divisive as a country. Even among the people that agree with each other, can never seem to agree either. So I get it. Going on to social media and raising your voice can sometimes be difficult because people are going to argue with you, and people are going to have different opinions on the things that you agree about. But being told that you phrase something wrong or being told that an idea you have is antiquated, right? That's how you learn and then grow, become a better person because of it. With all that being said, I'm also not, the most suited person to take your hand through the difficult waters of a conversation like this, but I will do my best. I'm friends with a lot of people that are so smart about these types of topics and know how to navigate the waters so effortlessly. Most of us kind of bumble through these types of discussions, and most of us say the wrong thing sometimes. But that's okay. There's a learning curve, I think, to get out there. If you have questions, look them up, try to find answers online, engage with people on social media, have conversations with people, and that's the way you can kind of like continue to be a more well-rounded person and learn stuff. There are even portions of this whole debate that I'm torn about. You know, there are things that I struggle with as well, wrapping my head around or grappling with differing viewpoints that I have. Like even just people posting the videos and photos of George Floyd on the ground dead, and the video of him dying. Like, I really struggle with that. On the one hand, I do think that there are people who will see those images and it will shock them into action, and that's good. On the other hand, maybe even stronger, I feel like normalizing the imagery of like a dead black person in the street is not something we should be getting used to. You know, it's still disturbing to see, but the more we see it and the more our social media feeds are inundated with this imagery, you know, I'm afraid people will get used to it, and the next time they see it, it's going to have less of an impact on them. In no way is that something we should even be getting used to seeing. It's awful, but I certainly don't want it to be so prevalent that we're used to it. Like, god damn, that's fucking awful. So I'm torn on a number of these subjects as well, but I don't know, we're only going to figure this out together. I feel like what's been going on the past few months through coronavirus, it's really poked holes in all the weaknesses that we have as a country, right? We realized a lot of problems that we have in healthcare. We realized a lot of problems we have in education. Our economy, which has proven to be rather weak and strongly dependent on restaurants. Of course, we're realizing all the problems that we have in the government. It's also becoming abundantly clear the problems that we have in law enforcement. And it seemed like a country that was built on a structure so solid is actually a country that's just been built on sand that's constantly shifting, and it's now at the point where we don't have enough underneath us and everything is falling down. This metaphors are getting out of control. A lot of people have known for a very long time that this country has been built on sand and that it's slipping out from underneath us, but you get the point. So a couple arguments that I'm seeing pretty frequently online are like, well, why the riots? Why the looting, destroying their own communities? But it's a form of protest. And basically, once a country gets to an explosive fever pitch point, sometimes it boils over like that. And there were other forms of protest about police brutality and the murder of black people that's been going on for months, even years. People have been protesting peacefully. Colin Kaepernick is the obvious example. He took a knee during the national anthem at football games, and white people lost their fucking minds over it, and they said it was so disrespectful. That was a peaceful form of protest, and people are frustrated, and they're sad, and they're scared, and they are so pissed off, rightfully so. So it's kind of boiled over into these types of protests, which are an age-old form of protest. This is nothing new. Think of it like you keep shushing someone who's trying to tell you something, and you won't hear what they say, and every time they talk, you put your hand over their mouth. What's going to happen? You move your hand, they're going to say it again. Shh, 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 shh. You move your hand, they're going to say it again. Eventually, they're going to slap your fucking hand away, and they're going to yell their point at you. That's what's going on right now. And tonight, all across our country is frustrated, disenfranchised people yelling their point at you. Hopefully, the country will hear it. And I'm sure I'm not even explaining it as articulately as I could, or even that I fully understand all the intricacies of these types of protests, the complexities of all of these social groups and everything that's going on in the country. And before you call anyone thugs, go take a look at some of these videos of police officers tackling women in the street, driving by and opening their car door and whacking peaceful protesters, firing, what are they, pepper balls or rubber bullets at reporters, arresting reporters. It's like we're watching a movie. It's just insane right now. But, the president has been telling everyone for years that the news media are bad guys, so I guess police are believing it. I don't know. It's just very frustrating. Another thing is, don't be afraid to write or say Black Lives Matter. Do not say all lives matter, because that's not what this is about, right? This is about Black lives. This is not about you. This is not about your family if you're white. And certainly don't say blue lives matter. So it's a very disheartening place to be right now. But let's talk about it further through cinema. So I originally had a different quadruple feature planned, but my way of discussing difficult subjects is to discuss them through a cinematic lens. So today's quadruple feature is going to be on police brutality. And I get it. A lot of people are probably like, I don't want to watch those types of movies. We're kind of going through that in our everyday lives, and that's totally understandable, and I respect that. Me personally, the way that I kind of deal with the world is when I'm scared about something, when I'm stressed about something, when I'm trying to learn more about something, I will try to consume a bunch of cinema about those types of subjects. So that's kind of how I cope, that's how I learn, that's how I deal with stuff. So today we are going to be taking a look at 4 films that all deal with police brutality, and they're from a wide variety of different types of viewpoints. So we have black filmmakers, white filmmakers, female filmmakers, and we're going to try to break this down and examine this from an area where I'm a little more comfortable, which is talking about movies. So without further ado, let's talk about some films. Police brutality in cinema. Okay, I've blathered on long enough. Let's dive into some of these movies. Our quarantine quadruple feature for the week, Police Brutality. Difficult films, but important ones, where we are going to explore some of the shit that's going on in our country and has been going on for decades, as you'll learn from some of these films. Our first film, Spike Lee's masterpiece, Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing I saw at a very young, impressionable age, and I loved it. And I loved it because I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, not the most diverse place. So to see all of these different diverse communities living in this one kind of borough of New York was so cool to me. The movie had explosive filmmaking. It takes place on the hottest day of the year in New York in summer. Spike Lee was very young when he made this. It's one of his earliest films. I think it's like his third or fourth movie. 1989 is when this one came out. It did not win Best Picture. It was not nominated for Best Picture, even though it was easily the best film of the year. What won instead was Driving Miss Daisy, which kind of adds insult to injury. A little bit of an antiquated film. Doesn't really tackle race relations in the most believable or, I don't know, respectful of ways. I adore this movie. I adore the cast. Everyone is really great. And it's an incredibly diverse cast as well. There's a character that a lot of the film is centered around named Radio Raheem, and he doesn't talk much. He just walks around with a huge stereo playing Fight the Power. He just plays that, loves that song all the time. The song, of course, has some deeper meaning throughout the film. But Radio Raheem has a tattoo on his knuckles. He's got love on one hand, and he has hate on the other. And in one of the best scenes of the movie, he has a very animated description of the age-old battle between love and hate. And hate always looks like it's on the rise, and it always has the upper hand over love, but in the end, love always conquers out over hate. And the really brilliant thing about that scene is that it was lifted almost verbatim from another film called Night of the Hunter by Charles Laughton. A brilliant film, and it's a brilliant scene in that movie. But what's incredible is, even though the words are so similar, the scene in Do the Right Thing has so much more weight and impact and importance than it did in Night of the Hunter. So, Radio Raheem has those tattoos on his... These aren't tattoos. I wrote these on just for this. I was lucky enough last year to see this in theaters. I saw a 35 millimeter print, and Spike Lee was there doing a Q&A. And I go to a lot of Q&As and stuff and see like a lot of celebrities talking about movies, and it's usually pretty cool, but I wasn't expecting this. I mean, I love Spike Lee, but like when he walked in the room, I've only experienced this like 2 or 3 times in this town, but when he walked in the room, the energy changed, and it was just like, damn, a legend just came in. But when I saw this, I was young. I was in elementary school. And it was a complicated movie to try to wrap my head around. There was a lot of things I did not understand about the film. And mainly, there's a character, Mookie, played by Spike Lee. He takes an action in the film that leads to actions being taken by others. I don't want to give away too much, but we do know that the movie is dealing with police brutality and riots, so you can expect some of that in there. And after the movie, I was really pondering, what is do the right thing? What is that phrase about? Who is that directly referencing? And I thought, Mookie, it's got to be Mookie. Did Mookie do the right thing? But really, it's, did anyone do the right thing? Who's right in the movie? Who's wrong in the movie? It doesn't give you clear-cut answers. It makes you kind of wade through some of your own personal beliefs to get to those answers. It is a difficult film. It's a really funny one. It's a really entertaining one, but it is a powerful and incredibly relevant one as well. So we're going to kick off the night strong with Spike Lee's masterpiece, Do the Right Thing. Movie number 2 is a tough one. It is Catherine Bigelow's Detroit. A lot of people did not like this movie, and I totally understand the criticism. It's actually very similar to the argument that I was making about social media being inundated with images of dead black people. A lot of people did not want to see the torture and murder of more black people in a movie when we're seeing it so frequently in our country. But I think the movie is more than that. I think it is really a wonderful portrayal of an event that happened that is absolutely terrifying. But it plays out like a horror film almost. The middle act of the film is a straight up horror movie, and it is really scary. It's not an easy film by any stretch of the imagination. I do think, personally, I think it's an important film. Would the film have been more powerful if it had been directed by a black filmmaker? Would there be a different vibe to it? Would it feel less like a horror movie and more like, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with who makes these films and the effects that they have on people. All I can say is I thought watching it, wow, there's a lot of people in this country who do need to see this. So if you feel like you're one of the people who doesn't need to see this and you don't want to partake in watching something that's like incredibly difficult, I totally understand it. I do think it should be required viewing for a lot of people that are wondering about the looters or wondering why that guy took a knee in the first place. There are some people that I think should see something this powerful and affecting, and it might change their minds because cinema is a really powerful tool for something like that. The problem is, how do we get these movies in their hands? How do we make certain people watch certain movies that we think would benefit them as humans? But this one really delves into police brutality in a very scary way. It's an incredibly well-made film as well. So it's a difficult one, but it's a really good one. Catherine Bigelow's Detroit. Movie number 3. Look, I can't program an entire night of these really heavy dramas, so I need something to kind of lighten the mood halfway through the night. So we are going to watch Maniac Cop 2. You might have some questions. Why not Maniac Cop 1? Because Maniac Cop 2 ups the ante in every way. It's bigger and badder. It's one of the best horror action films. There are very few of that subgenre, but there's some really exciting car chases. But don't be fooled, there's still some pretty good political commentary as well, just about police brutality. The movie's written by Larry Cohen, who passed away relatively recently. Within the past year or two, we lost him. Really great genre filmmaker. Wrote and directed a lot of exquisite horror films. And Larry Cohen is great because he's one of the most political horror filmmakers to ever live. If you watch his movies, It's Alive, The Stuff, God Told Me to Kill, he has really politically driven movies. He really gets some social commentary into all of the films that he makes. So he wrote this one. It's actually directed by a guy named William Lustig, who directed some horror films. He also directed a lot of pornos as well, so his movies feel particularly sleazy to them. This one's not like overtly sexual or anything like that, but it does have like a real sleazy vibe to it. It's really creepy. Maniac Cop scared me quite a bit when I was a kid, and there's kind of a trend that you don't see in films as frequently anymore, where there's an end title song that ties into the title of the movie, and the lyrics are basically a synopsis of the movie that you just watched. And it's a trend you saw a lot in the 80s, and I love it. I wish movies still did that, because the songs are oftentimes a blast. And there is a Maniac Cop 2 rap on this album. It's how the movie ends, and the song is amazing. Even if you don't go watch Maniac Cop 2, go look up the Maniac Cop 2 rap. I assure you, you will not be disappointed. Also, this vinyl, most of them were black when you bought them, although a few had a randomly inserted fire blast kind of color in the album. So I got one of the few randomly inserted red discs, which is pretty cool. But okay, music aside, the rap is awesome. You gotta watch the rap. But Maniac Cop 2 is a lot of fun, and this is just going to be a slight diversion where we watch a cop that is an equal opportunity destroyer. He kills everyone he comes in contact with, not just black people. So everyone can enjoy watching people get slaughtered in this one. And if you've never heard of the original Maniac Cop, look at that title. Look how salacious that cover is. Got Bruce Campbell and Tom Atkins, two genre icons starring in the movie. If you haven't heard of Maniac Cop, you will, because Nicholas Winding Refn celebrated auteur who made Drive, Only God Forgives, and Neon Demon. His next movie is a remake of Maniac Cop. We're not watching Maniac Cop, we're watching Maniac Cop 2. Oh my god. This is a tagline. You have the right to remain silent forever. That's awesome. All right, last movie of our quadruple feature on police brutality is going to be one that's a little difficult to talk about. We are going to watch Dragged Across Concrete, directed and written by Craig Zoller, who's exploitation filmmaker that's been on the rise the past few years. He did Bone Tomahawk starring Kurt Russell. He did Brawl and Cell Block 99, and then his third film, Dragged Across Concrete, starring Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn. This one's tough to talk about because this movie is from the point of view of two abusive cops. They're cops that bend the system. They're cops that abuse their perps. They are two shitheads. Like, they're the bad guys in everyday life. They're the characters we follow in the movie, and it doesn't try to glamorize them. I think this one is really worth a discussion for a few reasons. It's a genuinely very well-made piece of genre filmmaking, really well written. The story unfolds in a very interesting way. It goes off in tangents. Like, you'll follow a character for 10 minutes, and then it won't even be like a main character. So the movie unfolds in a very novelistic sort of way that's pretty interesting. But it's a tough movie because it's tough to kind of reconcile your views on these characters. And naturally, when you watch a movie with two dickhead cops, right? Cops that are bending the law, abusing suspects, are talking in a way that is very uncouth, a way that you would not want to hear people talk about minorities, about women, right? The way they speak, just kind of would kind of curl your toes. When you hear characters like that, it's tough because you automatically think is this the way the filmmaker is, or is this filmmaker just writing characters for you to get a different viewpoint? And honestly, I don't really know. I can't decide. I don't know where Craig Zoller's viewpoints lie on this film, and I think that makes it a very interesting, compelling viewing experience. Because if I did know, oh yeah, he totally relates to these cops, and he thinks cops should have the right to do whatever they want to get a confession. Like, if I knew that's how he thought, that would certainly taint the way that I view this film. As of now, I give him more credit, and I just assume he's a well-rounded, rational human who just wanted to write from the point of view of two characters that you would not normally want to see in a film. His casting of Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson, it's like, if you're going to have these two notorious sort of Republican type figures playing these two types of characters, you're either casting brilliantly to get the full disgusting impact of these people as these characters, or these are people that you really kind of look up to and idolize, and you want them to play these roles that you wrote, that you identify with. I don't know. That's kind of a gross thought. It's complicated, and the movie is very divisive. You'll see a lot of debate online because people write it off immediately. Oh, you want me to try to connect with this dirtbag character? Fuck you and fuck your whole movie. I don't really approach cinema that way. It's like you gotta kind of take a movie as a whole, and if it has characters you don't like that you don't want to go on this journey with, that's one thing, but try to analyze it from the point of view of what else does the movie have to say, and how was the movie made. There's a lot more you can get out of a film aside from whether you like the characters or not. So it's a complicated film, but this one definitely delves into some police brutality. In fact, it starts off with them on a case, and then they rough up a suspect, and they both get suspended. Like, that's how the movie starts, because they're both such shitty cops. And then they take a case of their own where they're gonna like score big and get some money. But this one definitely asks some hard questions, and this one won't be for everybody, but it is kind of a side of police brutality not explored in the other films. For the point of view of a quadruple feature, kind of analyzing this from all the viewpoints that we can in the span of 4 films, I think is worth examining. So yeah, this one is Craig Zoller's Dragged Across Concrete. I love that title. That is a wonderful title. I hate to break it to you though, nobody gets dragged across concrete in this entire film. The title is a metaphor of all things. So those are the 4 movies we're watching tonight. We could also sub in Fruitvale Station, Ryan Coogler's debut. Of course, he would go on to do his crowning achievement thus far, Creed, which I think is a brilliant film. And then he would go on to do, of course, Black Panther, which took the world by storm. But his first movie, Fruitvale Station, is a very powerful one as well, about police brutality. But it's essentially like one scene, very drawn out for almost all of the movie. And it's a difficult one to watch as well. A real beautiful performance by Michael B. Jordan, who, I mean, as far back as The Wire was like, you watch that kid and you're like, oh, he's going to be a star. And he sure is. He's a fantastic fucking actor. You could also sub in Kurt Russell starring vehicle Dark Blue. I like this film a lot. This one's not one of my official recommendations, but this is a pretty good cop drama set against the backdrop of the riots that were going on in Los Angeles at the time because of the beating of Rodney King. This is directed by Ron Shelton, who is kind of most famous for some of his kind of like lighthearted sports comedies like Tin Cup and White Men Can't Jump. So not the choice you'd probably expect for kind of a gritty cop drama, but I actually think this one's really solid as well. But our 4 official recommendations are Do the Right Thing, Detroit, Maniac Cop 2, and Dragged Across Concrete. And that will conclude our very difficult night, capping off a very difficult week, which is capping off a very difficult month, and probably the rest of a very difficult year. So I hope you enjoy some of these recommendations. I hope you are all taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. Remember, right now, it feels like this is winning. This will prevail. Stay strong, and we're going to get through this together.